In the golden era of the Super Nintendo, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past wasn't just another game, it was a revolution. Released in 1991 in Japan and 92 in North America, it redefined what an action-adventure game could be. First, Legend of Zelda introduced players to an open world of discovery, and its sequel, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, took a divisive detour into side-scrolling RPG mechanics, but it was A Link to the Past that truly solidified the series' formula, laying the groundwork for nearly every Zelda title that would follow. With its intricate world design, polished mechanics, and a balance between exploration and structured progression, it's a game that still holds up decades later. So, let's break down what made it such an enduring classic and why I still believe it's the greatest Zelda game ever made. Nintendo's research and development team, led by Zelda creator Shigeru Miyamoto, set out to return the series to its top-down roots while expanding its depth and complexity. They envisioned a world that felt alive, with secrets hidden at every turn and dungeons that seamlessly blended combat, puzzle solving, and exploration. Unlike its NES predecessors, A Link to the Past was designed with the Super Nintendo hardware in mind, allowing for richer color palettes, a larger overworld, and more expressive sprites. The game also introduced real-time scrolling, making movement through Hyrule feel smooth and immersive, and it truly felt like the first open-world game. Another key factor was Koji Kondo's soundtrack, which cemented the Zelda series' musical identity. The now iconic overworld theme was first reimagined in this game, while new tracks like the Dark World theme became instant classics. At its core, A Link to the Past refined Zelda's gameplay loop into something timeless and infinitely replayable. It balanced fast-paced combat, intricate dungeon design, and rewarding exploration, creating an experience that felt constantly fresh. Link's ability to swing his sword in an arc instead of a simple stab motion made battles feel more fluid and strategic. Now, if you just think about that on the surface, it doesn't seem like much, but in application and user experience, that changed the feel and dynamics of combat. The addition of the spin attack, a powerful charged move, gave combat a new layer of depth. Also, A Link to the Past introduced an arsenal of items that would become Zelda mainstays, like the hook shot, Pegasus boots, magic cape, and fire rod weren't just keys to progress. They expanded how players approach both combat and puzzle solving. And then there's the game's 11 dungeons, 3 in the light world and there's 8 in the dark world. And these dungeons were masterfully designed, each introducing new mechanics that built upon what came before. Bosses like Moldorm, Blind the Thief, and Ganon himself tested players' reflexes and puzzle-solving skills. What made A Link to the Past's world feel so special was its dense, interconnected design. Literally every screen of Hyrule felt purposeful. It felt like it could hide a secret, a treasure chest, an important NPC, or secret item. In the light world, the opening hours of the game introduced players to the Kingdom of Hyrule. It was a vibrant and beautifully crafted world full of towns, forests, rivers, and dungeons. And then there's the dark world, which about a third of the way through the game, about there, players were transported to the dark world, a twisted mirror image of Hyrule that was corrupted by Ganon's influence. The introduction of the dark world wasn't just a cool aesthetic shift, it was a gameplay revolution. Players had to navigate the two worlds in tandem, using changes in one world to solve puzzles in the other. This two-world mechanic doubled the game's size without making it feel bloated or obtuse. It also created one of the best aha moments in gaming history, when players realized they could use the magic mirror to hop between worlds and uncover hidden secrets. Each dungeon in A Link to the Past introduced a unique gameplay hook, while maintaining a perfect balance of combat and puzzles. Some highlights include the Tower of Hera, which introduced moving floor puzzles and and the frustration of being knocked down multiple levels by Moldorm. Then there's the Skull Woods, which, unlike traditional dungeons, this one was split between the overworld and underworld, forcing players to navigate between both. And then there's Thieves Town. Players had to escort a disguised boss through the dungeon, only to realize they had unknowingly been carrying Blind the Thief the whole time. And then there's the final stretch of the game, including Ganon's Tower and the final battle, which remains one of the most satisfying endgame sequences in gaming history. Miyamoto and his team wanted to create a game that felt both expansive and approachable, and one of the brilliant aspects of A Link to the Past is how it guides players without explicitly telling them what to do. Instead of lengthy tutorials, the game subtly teaches mechanics through level design. For example, the first dungeon, Hyrule Castle, gives you your first sword and shield, then immediately puts you up against guards that encourage you to learn blocking and attacking. The Desert Palace requires the Book of Medora to open, a lesson in paying attention to environmental clues. And then there's the Hookshot and Swamp Palace, which forces players to rethink how they traverse dungeons, teaching them to use tools creatively. These lessons never feel forced. Players learn organically through play, which is a hallmark of brilliant game design, and something that I feel is basically a lost art in video games. Usually if you don't, figure something out, and I'm not talking about Breath of the Wild, I'm talking about, like God of War, the new ones. If you don't figure out a puzzle or something like within 30 seconds or a minute, they basically just tell you what to do, which is annoying and condescending and, the opposite of brilliant game design. On its release, A Link to the Past was met with universal acclaim. Magazines like Nintendo Power and EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly, praised its engaging world, intuitive controls, and brilliant puzzles. Many publications still rank it among the greatest games ever made, if not the greatest game ever made. Even today, the game enjoys a dedicated fan base with speedrunners, modders, and just casual players returning to play it regularly. The randomized ROM hack, A Link to the Past randomizer, has gained a cult following, proving that its design is so strong, it can support plenty of new ways to play it decades later. Without A Link to the Past, the Zelda series as we know it just wouldn't exist. The overworld design, dungeon structure, and storytelling techniques became the template for future games, including Ocarina of Time. The jump to 3D carried A Link to the Past dungeon structure and puzzle-solving philosophy into the modern era. And then there's 2013's A Link Between Worlds, which was a direct spiritual successor that played with the idea of non-linear progression while maintaining the dual world concept. And then, of course, Breath of the Wild. While Breath of the Wild broke the traditional dungeon formula, its focus on seamless exploration, environmental storytelling, and world interactivity can all be traced back to A Link to the Past. It's important to acknowledge the brilliance of later Zelda entries, like Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild. Ocarina of Time brought the series into 3D with unparalleled ambition, creating a sense of scale and immersion that left players in awe. Breath of the Wild, meanwhile, redefined open-world gaming, emphasizing freedom and exploration in ways few games have matched. Yet despite their innovation, these titles can't quite dethrone A Link to the Past, in my opinion. Where A Link to the Past excels is in its precision. Unlike Ocarina of Time, which introduced an ambitious but sometimes unwieldy 3D camera and targeting system, A Link to the Past remains focused and polished. Its top-down perspective provides clarity in both exploration and combat, ensuring the player is never fighting against the controls. Every interaction feels tight and purposeful, a testament to the elegance of its 2D design. I'm very big on gameplay feel and design, if you can't tell. And of course I love Ocarina of Time, but it can feel clunky at times. And I promise you that you'll never play a second of A Link to the Past and think it's clunky or obtuse in any way, shape, or form. That's all. Not that Ocarina isn't an all-time great game. And I know that it's been remastered and the controls have been updated, but I don't think it'll touch the fluidity of A Link to the Past. As for Breath of the Wild, its vast open world is of course breathtaking. It's one of my favorite games ever made, but it's not without its own drawbacks. The game's focus on freedom sometimes comes at the cost of structure. While you can climb any mountain and glide across the map, the lack of traditional dungeons leaves a void that A Link to the Past fills effortlessly. Its world is expansive, yet contained, ensuring that every discovery feels meaningful rather than lost in the sprawl. And I'm talking about A Link to the Past here. And again, it's not that Breath of the Wild is bad, it's the opposite of bad, it's great. But if I had just one criticism for me personally, it is the lack of traditional dungeons. Because in a lot of ways, Breath of the Wild just feels like a bigger, giant 3D version of A Link to the Past without the dungeons. I think if it had those, I think it would be perfect. And I know they have like, it's dungeon-esque parts of Breath of the Wild, but you know what I mean. Anyways, I'm getting off track. A Link to the Past strikes a perfect balance between challenge and accessibility. Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild both feature moments of brilliance, many moments of brilliance, but can suffer from pacing issues. A Link to the Past maintains a steady rhythm, guiding players through its challenges without ever losing momentum. It respects your time, delivering an experience that feels dense and rewarding from start to finish. A Link to the Past is very much a well-oiled machine. It's like no filler, all gas, all the time. Even when there is side activities to do, everything is just so concise and well-designed that it never feels like you have to stray too far to get what you want or need. And I'll be honest, maybe it's just open world fatigue to a degree, but I do think Breath of the Wild is still one of the top open world games of all time, so I give it that. But man, am I crazy? Am I the only one that's like kind of like just tired of every game having to feel like it has to be so open and sprawling and giant? I miss the days of just dense, concise video games. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. But if you've played a Zelda game in the last 30 years, you've played some version of A Link to the Past. Ocarina of Time built on its structure in 3D. A Link Between Worlds paid direct homage, and even Breath of the Wild, despite breaking conventions, still carries the spirit of its world design and exploration. A Link to the Past is a game that feels timeless, one that people can pick up today and still enjoy just as much as they did in '92. No convoluted tutorials, no filler, just pure, distilled adventure gaming at its finest. Even in an era of massive, sprawling open worlds, A Link to the Past remains one of the best designed video games ever made. It wasn't just a defining moment for Zelda, it was a defining moment for gaming. Alright, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching. I can feel the hate already. I don't know. I feel like people are gonna get mad at me for this opinion, because if you watch my videos, you know that I definitely gravitate towards older games being better than newer games. And I feel like people are probably, the Breath of the Wild stans are going to hate me for this take. But I really do think A Link to the Past is still the best Zelda game ever made. I'm not saying that to be controversial. I think it is like splitting hairs, because Breath of the Wild is that good and Ocarina of Time is that good. But if you had a gun to my head and asked me to choose one of the three, I would probably choose A Link to the Past. You can throw Wind Waker in there too. Sometimes I forget how good Wind Waker was, but whatever, I'm getting off track. Yeah, do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments, and I'll try to duke it out with you if you give me too hard of a time, I guess. Anyways, I hope you guys all have a great day, and God bless.